and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming to you from right here on my YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, gather around as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies, movie news, some streaming, good stuff on television, all sorts of good stuff. And ladies and gentlemen, he's here. He's descended down from the steps of the Valhallan Mount Olympus. He's the one and the only Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, how you doing today, sir?
Well, apparently I've descended from the heavens. And let me tell you, John, the air up there is great. I feel clear.
As it would be. And as I'm getting a little warning notification on my computer. Oh, a little bit behind the scenes there. Yes, guys, I actually bring in Robert on a Skype call. Good to have you here today, Rob.
Yeah, you know, I walked across the Rainbow Bridge from the remnants of what used to be Asgard, looking around. And, you know, Asgard has no COVID. So that's
no
good.
COVID. They've done a good job. Done a good. And it's good that you're wearing that shirt there today, because that might be a part of today's conversations. And listen, guys, we do have a bunch of stuff that we're going to talk about here today. Here's how today's show is going to go. We're going to spend the first half of the show talking about some pre-set up topics. And then when we go into the second half of the show, we're going to take some of your live questions. Now, how do you get a live comment or question on the show? It's really simple. Simply go to the tip link that's in the top of the description of this video and click on it, or simply enter it in manually at streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tip. If you do, and you send in a topic or question, if it's, applicable to the show and within reason, then we will address your question on the show, and you're going to be supporting the show at the same time. And all of us here at the John Campea Show, thank you guys very much for that. And also, guys, don't forget, if you haven't done so already, why don't you take a second and click on that subscribe button, become a subscriber to the John Campea YouTube channel, it'll keep you up to date on all the stuff that we've got going on here. All right, guys, without any ado, we got no off the tops today, so we're going to dive right into it. Let's get into our main topics today. And how do we select our main topics here in the John Campea Show? Well, it's really rather simple. You see, you guys come up with them by going anytime, 24/7, over to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. Once you guys get there, you're going to see a form. Fill it out with your topic or question. It's totally free. Hit submit, and then maybe, just maybe, you might see your submission featured as a main topic here on the John Campea Show. With that down, let's get into main topic number one, shall we? And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Kyle Arking, who writes, "Well," writes Kyle, "the Mandalorian trailer was released and I was very disappointed. I'm all for not spoiling things, but this trailer, if you can even call it that since it's more of a teaser, didn't show us really anything that we hadn't seen before. I hope others liked it, but this is by far, the worst Star Wars trailer I have seen. What are your thoughts?" All right, thanks a lot for sending in that question, Kyle. Well, here's the thing. Of course, yesterday we talked about on the show that a brand new Mandalorian trailer was dropping with Monday Night Football. And as expected, a lot of people were watching Monday Night Football to watch this thing. And it dropped. Everybody started talking about it as soon as it came out. We talked about the strategy of dropping a trailer like this doing Monday Night Football yesterday, but now we've actually got the trailer itself and the teaser. Was it any good? I'm going to say, I got to disagree with you, Kyle. I thought it was a very good trailer. Now, understand what my kind of recipe is. What are my prerequisites for making a really good trailer? Show some, if it's an exciting property, show some exciting clips, give us a couple of good lines of dialogue, but most importantly, make sure you clearly lay out, this is what the story is. So here's what this is about. Obviously, that applies when we're talking about a movie, but I also believe it applies when we're talking about a season of television. Tell us, what is this season's story going to be? They did it in the first trailer. They re-emphasized it again in the second trailer, only they even went a little bit further. That a part of this quest is also him seeking out other Mandalorians. I thought that was key. And then we saw a lot of footage that, yes, was in the previous trailer, but we also got a glimpse of a few new things. Overall, it was a very good trailer. It to me, in my opinion, and I can only speak for myself, obviously, I thought it was a very good trailer. What I suspect, Kyle, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, okay? So please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But just based on what you were saying, and I've seen some other people online with this, it's not that they were looking for a good trailer. They were looking for some more candy. They were looking, I think some people approached this Mandalorian trailer just looking for the candy. They weren't looking for a good, solid trailer, which I contend this was. Granted, it was only 1 minute long. So I think Kyle is kind of right in saying it was really more of a teaser. I think you're absolutely correct in that assessment, actually. But let's, for semantics sakes, we'll just call it a trailer. I thought structurally it was a very solid little trailer. But as we said on this show yesterday, I did not expect them to show us Ahsoka. I got so many messages from people yesterday, Rob, insisting, John, you don't know anything. They're absolutely going to show Ahsoka Tano. They're absolutely going to. And I say, look, they might. I don't know that they're not. I'm just telling you, I'm going to be super surprised if they are, because they're going to want to keep that as a secret as far as like what she's going to look like and all that kind of stuff. They want to keep that under their belt. And number two, they don't want to create a false sense of expectation that if you feature Ahsoka in the trailers, you might create this expectation that she's going to be in more of the season than she actually is, because she's only going to be in one episode. But so I think people were looking for more eye candy, and when they didn't get the visual candy they were looking for, whether it was a shot of Bo-Katan or whether it's a shot of Ahsoka Tano or whatever, when they didn't get that, they felt disappointed, which is natural. When we don't get what we were hoping to get, me included, we feel a sense of disappointment. But overall, Rob, I don't know how you felt about it. You and I haven't discussed it yet. Mostly footage we've seen previously, yes. But I still thought it was a pretty solid trailer. It ramped me up. I got excited. I'm looking forward to seeing this. That's my take on this little spot at any rate. You had a chance to see this Mandalorian. We'll call it a teaser. What did you think about it?
Well, one, I'd call it more of a TV spot, being that it was 60 seconds.
That's true.
But dude, the show drops in 10 days. I don't want to know anything. I don't want to know what, even though we talked about it yesterday on the show, I thought, yeah, sure, they might show Ahsoka Tano. But I don't want to. These are all the reveals that I want to get when I actually watch the show. We've become so, I don't know, I think trailer entitled might be the word the phrase I want to use. It's like, do we have to see everything? Isn't that what watching this show is all about? I know the Mandalorian's coming in 10 days. I don't need to know anything more than that. And I thought it was cool seeing the Razor Crest crash on the ice and spin around backwards. That was cool. I liked seeing Cara Dune and Apollo Creed meeting the Mandalorian, with Baby Yoda, which we'd kind of seen before. I like seeing the Imperial troop transport being used to crush a biker scout. That was cool. Like, what more am I supposed to get? Like, show me the show, man. I don't want to see anything more.
Yeah, and listen, I'm kind of the mentality of, like, I will sometimes complain about trailers that don't give us anything to let us know what is it we're even getting. You know what I mean? Like, you'll hear me complain
right.
Like, I talk a lot about, like, the Blade Runner 2049 trailer. You didn't tell us what the movie, like, I'll complain about that sometimes, but this was a great example, Rob, I think, of a middle ground between what you want and what I want. I felt like it holds a lot back while at the same time clearly laying out for the viewer, this is our story of this gunslinger in the wild, wild west of the outer reaches of the galaxy, The Mandalorian Season 2. This is his quest this season. So I thought it was a really nice balance myself personally. Question is, guys, how did you feel about this new Mandalorian spot? Maybe you were like me and you thought, oh, that was really refreshing. That was great. Got exactly what we wanted. We know what the story is. Now we're heading in to see it in 10 days. Or maybe you're like a lot of other fans where it's like, you know what? I wanted to see something new. Show me that Bo-Katan. Show me that whatever. Show me somebody wielding the dark saber or whatever, right? And that's understandable too. Maybe you fall into that camp. Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys, with that down and out of the way, let's move into main topic number 2. And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Gary the Guy. And Gary the Guy writes, hello, John and Rob. One of the big topics that usually comes up when talking about the Batman is when does it happen? I believe you probably meant to write, when does it happen? Some people thought around the same time as the Joker movie. A new picture came out, though, that shows it happens in modern day. Does this surprise you? And do you think it's the right move to have it set today instead of in another decade? All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yeah, this has actually been one of those little areas, a little shadow in the corner of mystery surrounding the Batman movie, which has been, we've never really had a clear picture of when does this movie take place? In what time period does it happen? Is it an 80s set thing? Is it a 90s set thing? A lot of people speculating this is somehow going to be, or could it possibly be connected to Joaquin Phoenix's Joker? Maybe this is set when that little Bruce Wayne we saw is now like 15 years older, 20 years older. This is set in the late 90s or something like that. Maybe the early 2000s, whatever, what have you. Maybe it'll be around there. That's always been kept a little bit, nebulous, if you will. They've kept that one a little bit under wraps. Well, apparently, it's not really under wraps anymore. Apparently, this thing happens in modern day. Now, this comes to us from a online journalist, Brandon Davis, who works over with comicbook.com. And he claims he was on set of the Batman in Chicago and got a shot of this thing that's part of the taxi cab labels, licensed taxi cab 2019. Now, it's important to note that Brandon Davis is not one of these Gus's gas station movie reviews.fart bloggers. He's actually he does this. This is what he does. And if he's revealing this, I'll take it. I'll give it its credit. I'll say, yep, I believe this is absolutely real. So 2019, probably now stretched out into 2020, the Batman movie does indeed take place modern day. Interesting. Because, Rob, I think even though there hasn't been any definitive word that says this is going to take place in 1990 or 1995 or 2000 or whatever, I think a solid prevailing train of thought amongst a lot of people, and I'll say I'll include myself in this, kind of assumed that this would indeed be set in a different decade. And of course, for a lot of people, that meant if it was set in a different decade, that kept open the possibility that they're going to somehow say this is the younger version of the Ben Affleck Batman. This seems, at least on the surface, Rob, and there could be holes to this that I'm missing out on, but to me, this sort of seems to put that absolutely to bed. This is not Ben Affleck's Batman. This is not a different age version of Ben's Batman. This is not in any way or shape or form connected to the Joaquin Phoenix Joker. This is, as they alluded to at DC Fandom, this is truly a standalone Batman within the multiverse that they have, but truly it's a standalone Batman. Rob, it does raise a lot of questions. Do you think moving and having this particular Batman story, Matt Reeves' Batman, being told in a modern context today, 2019, 2020, 2022, by the time it comes out, whatever. But was this the right move? And what are some of the repercussions that you can think of it being in this particular time period instead of saying being in another? How do you see it?
Well, when you're talking about time periods in the Batman universe, I would ask you, when does Tim Burton's Batman take place? Where is that Gotham City designed by Anton Furst, with all that crazy production design? Christopher Nolan's Batman movies, they don't really take place in Chicago. They take place in a fictional Gotham City. So any Batman movie takes place in some other time because it's not our world. It's a different world. So it's not like George Bush was president during the Nolan Batman movies. There was a different president. So I think that while the Batman film, it doesn't matter when it takes place really, because if it's a standalone movie, as we've heard, and I suspect it is, like the Christopher Nolan Batman films, at least it's a standalone movie until they decide to have the Flash cross over into that realm and meet Battinson. I think that these Batman movies can be any time. I don't think our dates apply to their movies, with one exception, and that would be the technology. By setting something in 2019, I think they're saying that internet technology, cell phone technology, all of that technology is contemporary with ours. So, and even the super science that Batman might use is going to be similar to the present day. And I think that's a smart thing to do, because if it was set in, say, the 30s, you couldn't have cell phones. That wouldn't, I mean, I guess you could make it more steampunk, but then it just distances the whole concept sort of from our reality. So I think this is kind of a compromise, maybe, because if it was a standalone Batman movie, like let's say it took place 20 years ago, well, that's still the year 2000. Do they have to be worrying about Y2K and all the computers dying like we did 20 years ago? It's really not that much different in terms of technology and what was going on. I mean, other than the fact we didn't have HD TVs back in 2000.
Here's another thing that comes up, because I saw this batted around a little bit online. The other kind of repercussion of this, if you think about it, this is Batman who's just, what did Matt Reeves say? He's just in his second year, right? He's just in his second year of being Batman. So this is a younger-ish Batman set in modern times. One of the other things that I saw somebody online kind of point out was an interesting thought. Say, well, I guess this rules out Robin, because again, some people start speculating now with the new Batman. Now with a brand new Batman, this opens the door for them to bring in a Robin. A lot of people have been wanting to see a Robin. I think bringing in a Robin is a dumb idea unless you heavily adapt it and kind of change the 11-year-old running around with a stick. If you want to adapt it and change that, age him up a bit, I'm good with it. But there were some people that thought this opens the door for a Robin. My assumption here, and I could be wrong, is that if this is indeed Batman in just his second year and he's Robert Pattinson's age and this happens today, that does kind of rule out that anytime soon we're going to get a Robin in this particular Batman iteration. Do you think that's still a door open, or do you think this actually closes the door on that? What do you think?
I think it probably does close the door on that. And to be honest, I think with these Batman movies, once you include Robin, like you've pointed out a lot on the show, there's very problematic elements to the Batman mythos once Robin is brought in. I mean, it works better in comic book form, and of course, in the '66 Batman, it worked good because they were older. But if you have a Robin that's in his Batman that's in his late 20s, and he's got some 13 or 12 or 11 or 10-year-old kid coming in from the circus working with him, I think that's a little problematic in terms of what Batman's going to be doing on the mean streets of Gotham. I think it becomes a distraction. I mean, what 29-year-old guy, I'm just assuming he's 29, what 29-year-old guy is going to want to have to worry about a 10-year-old when he's fighting crime on the streets? I mean, yeah, that's rough.
I agree. Question is for you guys. What do you think about this? Maybe you were one of the people who've been assuming it was going to be a Modern Contacts 1. Maybe you're one of those people who'd still been kind of wondering what period of time does this take place in. What do you see as the ramifications of this now that it seems to be put to rest? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to our third main topic today. And our third main topic today gets submitted to us by Ed R. And Ed R. writes, "Greetings and salutations. It's only one guy's opinion, but it gets me really excited for the new Borat movie to see Seth Rogen has already seen it 6 times and says it's one of the funniest movies he's ever seen. Does Rogen's reaction get you more excited for the movie?" All right, thanks a lot for sending that in. And yeah, listen, we were just talking a couple of days ago about the fact that the new Borat film that Sacha Baron Cohen very secretly, how he was able to pull this off, I have no idea, but very secretly went about shooting a sequel to Borat, and it was ready to go. I believe it was Amazon that acquired it. I think it's ready to go on Amazon, coming like later this month. We're going to get it. It's coming really, really soon. Now, here's an interesting thing about it. One of the guys out there that seems to have a pretty good handle on what comedy is Seth Rogen. He's got a good handle on comedy. I didn't like Sausage Party. Not funny. Except for the last 5 minutes. Some of the freaking funniest stuff I've ever seen. But overall, I didn't like Sausage. But other than that, Seth Rogen is hilarious. He's got a good handle on comedy. And he actually came out and kind of spontaneously wrote this. He said, I've seen Borat 2 around 6 times over the last few months, and I cannot wait to watch it a 7th. It's crazy and wonderful and couldn't be any more timely. This is the key part, though. It also has a few of the funniest scenes I have ever seen in a movie. I'm excited for you to see it. And that, of course, comes to us from Seth Rogen. Now, I've said before that I am a big fan of the first Borat movie. I love it. It's actually one of the very few films. I think I've only done it for 7 or 8 times, Rob. Back when I used to give scores. It's one of the very few films, maybe only 7 or 8, that I actually, as a reviewer giving scores, gave a 10 out of 10 to. That's how powerful my first viewing experience of it was. It doesn't replay well. Like Borat, the second and third and fourth time I watched it, it had less of an impact because that initial shock value is gone. But my first watching of the first Borat movie, I can't emphasize how much it really did have an impact on me. I thought it was brilliant. But when it comes to a Borat sequel, while I am excited to see it, sure, I've said this to you before, Rob, my excitement has been a little bit tempered because is the shtick of Borat worn out at this point, right? Part of the brilliance, Rob, of that first one was that, it was hitting us so unexpectedly. It was doing things and saying things and being things that caught us completely off guard. And I just wondered aloud on this show, and I said this to you, I just don't know if that shtick can play out over another movie, right? And then the trailer came. And while the trailer certainly has its moments, I'm not excited about them including the daughter. That seems to take it away from me a little bit. So I will admit my excitement level for this movie has been tempered a little bit. That said, I consider Seth Rogen to be a pretty funny guy. For him to come out and say, and it's not his movie, to come out and say, this is some of the funniest stuff you will ever see in a movie in it. I gotta say, even though my expectations are tempered, that does put a smile on my face and makes me look forward a little bit more to seeing it. Rob, you heard these comments from Seth Rogen. How does it affect your expectations, and what do you make of them?
Well, look, I have to say, the more I see of this movie, the more I think it's going to be way outrageous. And I'm hoping, if there's anything that we need to have the one thing that Borat does is that he makes us really confront who we are as people, what we believe, because what he does is he goes in and exposes things that I think a lot of us would like to pretend aren't there, especially those things that maybe are inside of us when it comes to certain prejudices we might have that we might think that we're really enlightened about, but really we're not as enlightened as we think we are. And I think that's what Borat is really good at doing, both the concept, the whole idea, and what Sacha Baron Cohen does with the character. And I think now more than ever, when everybody seems to get on their moral high horse about everything. Everyone is so quick to be triggered in cancel culture and all that. And I think that when you see he comes through like a steamroller, and there are no sacred cows when it comes to Borat, he just rolls right over it. And I think that we're going to get a huge dose of a huge dollop of reality as served up the way only Borat can. But like you, I do wonder if the concept is played out, because with Borat, you're already expecting to get that.
Right.
And it's like, how's he going to do it all? And I think they showed more of a clip on Jimmy Kimmel last night of the scene when they go to like the pregnancy clinic that doesn't advocate abortion. Right.
They show that. They show a part of that in the trailer.
In the trailer, they go a little further. And I'm like, whoa.
I was afraid to ask.
Well, this is it's just when it goes more into the, well, I'm her father and it's my fault I put the baby inside her. That goes a little further and you're just like, whoa. If we're going to get more of that, I think the movie is going to be, it's certainly going to be a fun watch, if not a difficult one.
I said I didn't love the trailer, but one of the moments of the trailer that I would be lying if I didn't say I laughed a lot was when he then turns to the doctor, have you put baby inside your daughter? And the doctor, no. It's like, oh my God. Like, I just thought So I don't know. I don't know what to expect. So, but you touched on something there, Rob. That's key. When you're sitting there expecting something completely wacky about to be said, it kind of diminishes, or doesn't it, to kind of diminish the impact of it when the wacky thing is said or done? Like, isn't that true? Or do you think Sacha Baron Cohen can actually overcome this and hit us so hard that no matter how much we're expecting it, it's still going to knock us off kilter? I don't know. What do you think?
I think he's going to hit us hard, because I saw him, he was being interviewed and he's talking about how he uses the character to expose things like racism and hypocrisy that have been sort of touchstone issues for him throughout his whole career. And I think it's going to be savage. I really do. I think that there's going to be no holds barred. I mean, the only thing I worry about is, like, obviously that joke with the baby, we know she ate a little plastic baby off of a cupcake. How long can you sustain that skit before it becomes overkill? And then you're like, it's not funny anymore. And as what we've seen in the movie, it's going to skirt that fine line. Is the joke been played out too long? Well, we shall see soon enough. 3 days? It drops on the 24th, so the 23rd at midnight.
Well, I got to admit, hearing Seth Rogen say this has increased my thing. But by the way, how good is it to be Sacha Baron Cohen right now? Because he's got Borat 2 coming out in a few days. And they just dropped Trial of the Chicago 7, which is actually my #1 film of the year right now. I think it's the best film of the year, and he is fantastic in it. He's absolutely fantastic.
Being married to that beautiful redhead Isla Fisher, it's probably pretty good being Sacha Baron Cohen every day.
All the time. It's always going to be.
All the time.
Question is,
guys.
An
Australian redhead? Oh, my God.
What do you think about Seth Rogen's comments about Borat? Do they surprise you? Do they change your expectation levels of this movie? Yeah, maybe your expectations levels were already sky high. Maybe your expectations levels have been like mine. Like, yeah, I'm looking forward to it, but I'm a little bit nervous about it. Regardless, what do Seth Rogen's words do to you as far as your expectations for this film? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down and out of the way, let's now move on and start taking your live questions, shall we? And once again, if you want to get a live question on the show, if it's, on topic and within reason, simply go on over to the tip link that's in the top of the description of this video, or simply use the tip link manually, streamlabs.com/movieblogtv/tip. Again, you'll be getting your comment or question on the show if it falls within those parameters. And of course, you're supporting the show at the same time. And all of us here, thank you guys very much for that. All right. With that said, let's get over to it, shall we? And we'll get things started off here with, as I adjust this a little bit, we got John Campea, who writes, oh no, we're going to start off with Willow. And Willow writes, I should say, I really enjoyed the Trial of Chicago 7 and... I lost it. There it goes. I really enjoyed the Trial of Chicago 7, and I thought it was the most entertaining movie I've seen all year. I am a bit conflicted on the ending. On one hand, I did find it a bit cliched. On the other, it did still succeed, emotionally moving me. Well, thanks a lot for writing that in, Willow. And I actually, I put up a video last night. I actually did an editorial on why the ending of the Chicago 7 is awesome. Because there are people, you're not alone, Willow. There are a lot of people out there who love the movie, but really didn't like the last scene, really didn't like the ending. To me, the ending was actually perfect. And instead of just regurgitating everything, just taking 5 minutes to regurgitate everything I said before, if you have seen Trial of Chicago 7, make sure you've seen it because it is a spoiler video. But if you want to go on over and check that, look for the video I posted last night called Why the Ending of the Chicago 7 is Fantastic. Go and find it there and check it out. But again, Willow, you're not alone. But I really thought it worked, and I explained fully in that video why I thought it worked. So go check that out and let me know what you think about it once you do that. All right, next up, John Campea writes, and you wanted to be my latex salesman. That is Seinfeld. Vandelay Industries. That's what it was. Vandelay Industries. Vandelay Industries. I like a good Seinfeld quote every once in a while. That was a funny episode. I like that one. All right. Orange Handwrite. Thanks for that, John. Now I'm just sitting here thinking about that episode. seeing George running out of the bathroom with his pants still down around his thing, yelling, Vandalay Industries. Anyway, thanks for putting that thought in my head today. All right, Orange Hand writes, so you've said films/shows are allowed to mention other copyrighted characters if they're still fictional characters within that world. But can a film revolve around an entire story around a copyrighted character as long as they remain fictional, or is that a no-no? That's a good question, Rob. Because like if you're a show, right? Let's see your normal television show. And you can have a scene where some guys are talking about something and somebody says, yeah, man, redheads are that guy's kryptonite. It's like, don't compare him to Superman, whatever. And then they move on. You can make references like that because that's a cultural thing. Like you can drop a reference like that. But can you revolve your entire story around something? My first reaction is to say no, but there's a friend of ours, Kyle Newman, who directed the movie Fanboys. That is a movie that actually falls exactly into what Orange Hand's talking about, because that's a movie that entirely revolves around another IP, Star Wars. And he was able to base his whole movie on that. And I don't think he got like a release from Lucasfilm to do it. I think he was just able to do it. So I don't know. That's a really good question. Rob, how would you answer that question? Like what from your understanding, how do you think that works out?
Well, when I was doing, Free Enterprise and we talked about Star Trek all the time and we had obviously William Shatner, it was very interesting. We couldn't say he was Captain Kirk in the movie. We had to say, and this is according to the lawyers, in your portrayal of the character of Captain Kirk, we could say that, because that way that is a reality in life. That is not that you're talking about something like you can say William Shatner portrayed the character of Captain Kirk in Star Trek. But if we were to call William Shatner Captain Kirk, then you violate, then it becomes you're crossing over into IP land and you can't do that. So it's a very, like we can show, I'll give you another example. When these kids went to see Star Trek the Motion Picture, we could show the words Star Trek the Motion Picture on a marquee, but we couldn't use the logo design of the film. Like we couldn't show the movie poster. That's copywritten IP. We couldn't use the Star Trek the Motion Picture font because that's a trademark or a copywritten mark. But you can put Star Trek the Motion Picture on a movie marquee that is just generic writing because that's what it is. I mean, you're not violating because it really exists, so you can talk about it, but nobody is going to mistake a movie marquee with generic writing on it as anything other than a movie marquee with generic writing on it. So right. If you're talking about like wanting to steal the Phantom Menace or going into, you can say that, we're going to go steal the movie, The Phantom Menace. But when you start talking about the Phantom Menace within sort of the box of it being real, then it starts to become, and obviously if you start showing iconography, then it becomes problematic. Like if you're wearing a screen accurate Chewbacca costume, for instance. And if it's not a parody, and Fanboys is a parody, it's a comedy. So that's also an extra added layer of protection. When you're doing a send-up, that's how a movie like Spaceballs can get made. Because nobody's gonna mistake Dark Helmet for Darth Vader.
Right.
So it's, so Fanboys had a lot of leeway because it was a comedy. And when you're watching Fanboys, you're never going to mistake it. Like, is that real Star Wars? That's when you'd get into trouble. So
there's also a great example of that complication. There's a great scene in Free Enterprise where Shatner is talking about walking by the house that's on fire. Right. And because then it becomes, you got to be very careful how you do it, because he's telling the story of some other guy saying to him, Captain Kirk, Captain Kirk. But your main characters aren't referring to him as that. So it's like it gets really into this intricate web, doesn't it?
Yes, I mean, and that was really difficult, to deal with that because, and then Shatner says in the same scene, "I wasn't Captain Kirk, I wasn't a hero," and that's something that is, dude, we went back and forth with lawyers. We had, as you know, you've recently come across this in your own documentary. You have a lawyer when you've got to be very, very careful. Like in your documentary, can you show footage from movie trailers? Now you can, like, it's if you're using
if
a
done
trailer,
a certain way. Yeah, if done a certain way. And you're right. Like the back and forth with the lawyers, like I've been working with the lawyers on this because we're using copywritten material. And there are certain rules that if you follow them, you can use copywritten material or whatever, but it's a very intricate set of rules that you got to be very, very careful of.
I mean, I thought it was interesting. You told me the other day about how your lawyer said you might have had to adjust a few things based on what somebody has said contextually about the footage you're showing. Yep. And that's a very real thing. And when you're making a documentary, people need to know, and that's true of fiction as well. And also something else that people have to understand is, let's say you're making a movie, whether it's a comedy or whether it's a serious movie. Let's say you want to show a product and you don't like, the product needs to be shown in a light that's favorable to the company. Otherwise they'll get upset, they'll come after you. And it's a minefield. It's a minefield.
This is a great topic for a longer form. I would seriously love, I think it would be a really good, like half-hour video to get you, me, and Kyle to sit down. Like, cause I just did a documentary that had a lot of copyright. You obviously with Free Enterprise, Kyle with Fanboys, to sit down and really talk about our experiences with that from those 3 different points. I think that'd be a fascinating video, but for now we got to move on. But that's a fascinating topic.
That's a good idea though.
All right, let's move on here. Mr. Hoover writes, "Hey, John and crew, do movie theaters pay to get movies to come to their theater, like $200 to $2,000 or more? If so, given the circumstances, will this continue considering AMC might run out of cash and at the end of the year? Do you review short films on YouTube?" I do not. That's 2 separate questions. I don't review short films, no. To the best of my knowledge, no. Movie theaters do not pay studios to get movies in. What it's all done, it's all part of a contractual agreement on that. Okay, we will put these things into our theaters. This is the financial arrangements, blah, blah, blah. And it costs them money just to open their doors. And it costs them money to take up their screens and all that kind of stuff. But I don't believe, there may have been a period of time, Rob, unless I'm forgetting something, there may have been a period of time where movie theaters said, "Oh, you've got this movie, Studio A, we'll give you $20,000 so we can put but I don't think that's the case anymore. Now it's all wrapped up in their very symbiotic relationship of splitting revenue. Do you know it being anything different?
No, I mean, I think what happened, like in Washington State, in my home state, they used to have, like, movie theater chains would bid on movies and without seeing them. So if the movie wasn't any good, the theater chains were kind of screwed. And the theater chains kind of got angry with that. So they started this blind bidding law, which meant that theater chains had to see a movie before they bid on it to play in their theater chains. And that was a big deal. So then it became, I think, a little bit more symbiotic because the studios wanted, obviously, the theater chains to be excited about the movies that they were playing, and they needed to have a symbiotic relationship because everybody wants to get successful. The better a movie is, the more successful a movie is, the better movie theaters do, and the theater chains do. So everybody's looking for the same thing. I mean, the days of movie theater or studios trying to slip out a turkey onto the theater owners, those days are over.
All right. Excellent answer. Move on now. Let's see. Patrick Conway writes, over under 60%. Doctor Strange appears in WandaVision. I think there's a strong chance he appears. Like, can't wait for the team up between Doctor Strange and Scarlet Witch. Like, easily my most anticipated upcoming superhero team up. Well, Patrick, there could be a wrench in that. First of all, over under 60% that Doctor Strange shows up in WandaVision, under. There is a chance. Don't get me wrong. There is a chance. But 60% is obviously over 50. That means we'd be saying it is likely that he shows. I don't think it's likely that he shows up. There is a chance, but I take under 60%. Here's the wrench. There's a lot of speculation, and Rob, you and I have talked about this ourselves, amongst ourselves, is that this team-up movie you're looking forward to it may not be a team-up movie. Again, we don't know anything, but there is a lot of very well-grounded speculation that Wanda may very well, could possibly, for the most part, almost be an antagonist in the Doctor. Depending on what goes on in WandaVision, it could lead into her being a problem that Doctor Strange needs to step in and deal with. Again, we have nothing as far as official word about what the actual thing is going to be about, and there have already been some speculation about other antagonists showing up as well. But Rob, there's a possibility here, just a possibility that this Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness with, Scarlet Witch showing up in it is not necessarily going to be a superhero team-up movie. But so Rob, let's ask you this. Over under 60% that Doctor Strange pops up in the WandaVision show, and then just quick thoughts on whether or not that's going to be a team-up movie once we get into Doctor Strange 2.
Oh, I think Wanda Maximoff's going to be a problem. I think there's going to be, if you go by the comic, Wanda Maximoff became a huge problem in the Marvel universe. The whole House of M storyline was because she altered the fabric of reality to make mutants the dominant force on Earth. And I think probably the loss of Vision in Infinity War and Endgame might have driven her over the brink. And I think the world that she's living in, the world that we're seeing, is her mind. Or something to do with her fractured reality, her damaged psyche, she's lost her brother, and now she's lost the man she loved, or the android she loved. And I think that, after defeating Thanos, maybe it was too much for her. And I love this idea. Bring it on. I wouldn't be surprised if at the end, maybe of the WandaVision show, Doctor Strange shows up and it kicks off whatever the Multiverse of Madness is about. Maybe that's what Wanda does at the end of WandaVision, is she fractures the reality of the Marvel Cinematic Universe somehow. And she is the antagonist.
Could be. All right, let's move on here.
By the way, that would be rad.
It's going to be interesting to see where they go with that. Also got to remember, too, we got Doctor Strange makes an appearance in Spider-Man 3, and that's going to be in between WandaVision and Doctor Strange 2. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays into it as well. All right, B. Wayne, New York writes, John, so I watched the West Wing reunion on HBO. I loved it. It was so good. Martin Sheen and all the actors were great. It felt like the series never ended. If the ratings were good, do you think HBO Max might try and do another one, or maybe even a series? Vote Bartlett in 2020. No, I don't, unfortunately. I would love nothing more. See, when I first heard that they were going to do a HBO reunion of them, I thought they were literally going to write a new episode that would be played out on stage. And it would be about these characters now coming back together. President Bartlett has been retired for 15 years at this point. President Bartlett had been retired for 15 years or whatever. And maybe now Robert, he was in Parks and Rec. Why am I? Rob Lowe. Maybe now the Rob Lowe character is now running for office, or maybe he is the sitting president now, and they're all, I didn't know. But listen, there is nothing I would like more, B. Wayne, for them to get them back together and do a new series. And maybe Rob Lowe is now the president, and he went out and got his old boss to come and be his chief of staff. I don't know. That seems ridiculous, but I would love nothing more. But no, honestly, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think they want to go back to that. And but just seeing them back together again for that one thing was pretty awesome for me. Preston the Kryptonian writes, "Hey John, so I'm on season 5 of Lucifer. Awesome. And now I'm seeing that Warner Brothers is getting credit for this show when it is a Netflix original. Did Warner Brothers buy it, or is it always in Netflix studios? Just curious. Thanks." Well, this is an example, Rob, and correct me if I'm wrong. This seems to me to be an example of, like movies, there is a production company and there's a distributor. Every movie has a production company that makes the movie and a distributor that then takes that movie and decides what to do with it and handles it and manages it from there on. I think in television, we get much of the same thing. There are television shows that Sony Pictures Television makes, and they're on a WB network.
Right.
That happens. It doesn't happen in the movies. You don't get a Sony produced film usually that then Warner Brothers distributes, although in a particular situation like Sony and Marvel, that happens with Spider-Man, but it's rare. I believe Warner Brothers Television is still like the production company of Lucifer. I think they still make the show. But Netflix but Fox, who was carrying it, decided not to carry it. They shopped it around. For whatever reason, it didn't go to a Warner Brothers owned entity for whatever reason. And Netflix picked it up. Just like Netflix didn't make, what's a good example? Trial of the Chicago 7 we were just talking about. Netflix didn't make that movie, but it's a Netflix show because it's on the Netflix network. They are the .1 distributor of it. It's on their thing. So that's how I think that breaks down. Again, I'm not in the production room of this, so I don't know this for a fact, but that seems to me what that would be in this situation. Rob, how would you address that?
Well, I don't know. Netflix might have, Netflix is financing. It comes down to who is financing these movies. And a lot of the time a production company will be formed by, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5. A production company might just be an LLC that has been started to produce that film. And then what happens is that finished film is then sold to a distributor, like sold to a Netflix, and Netflix will buy it outright. They will own it lock, stock, and barrel and pay the production company however much they're going to pay for it. Or Netflix will finance the film entirely by itself, and then it's a Netflix movie. But like Netflix is acquiring, like Lucifer was a show that was being made by another production company that then they have acquired onto their platform. Now, what's really interesting is shows that have ended, like Designated Survivor, Netflix will come in and pay for like the 3rd season of that show. Now, it still has to be produced by the original entity because those things are, I guess, they're already set up and put in place. But it's unclear to me whether, like, did Netflix buy Lucifer outright, or did they only buy the show and then make the last season? I mean, these are questions that are sort of strange. Like, Netflix didn't own Friends. They just bought the rights to show it. Like in 2019, they paid $100 million to show Friends for the year. But then at the end of that year, it gets pulled off their platform and put onto HBO Max. So it really depends. I mean, there's a number of different ways to do things. I am curious, though, when a show like Lucifer comes over to Netflix, if they're buying it outright, which seems strange to me, but maybe not, because I would think they would have many distribution deals internationally. And
yeah, I don't think they buy it. I didn't think they bought it outright. I still think it's a property of Warner Brothers. Yeah,
I mean, they might pay for it to have it on. Like, it's like Friends. They paid $100 million to run Friends for a year, and that's it. So maybe they pay to produce a 3rd season of a show, but then the ownership of the show is retained by the original production company, like Warner Brothers or the companies that are making it, the various production companies and Warner Brothers. Who knows? It's all different spending.
Yeah, you're right. That's the thing. It is very from situation to situation. All right. Certified Loverboy writes, the Mandalorian trailer was cool and all, but how about them Cowboys? America's team, right? Pathetic. And what's even more pathetic is that they'll probably win the division with a 2-4 record. It's always a good day for me when the Cowboys lose. Listen, I'll tell you what. I hate the Dallas Cowboys. I hate the Dallas Cowboys. And I am like you. I always celebrate when they lose. However, got to say this, though. I mean, nobody wanted to see. I don't know if you guys saw it, but what happened to their quarterback, Dak Prescott. Terrible thing. Nobody likes to see that. It's like he got hit, and then you see him sitting on the field, and he's like turning to the sideline and doing the wave thing, like telling a trainer to come out. I'm like, oh, I wonder if he got banged up, whatever. And then you saw his foot. And I'm not going to bring up any images of it. If you want to see it, you go look it up.
Oh, dude.
And we thought at first his shoe had half come off because his foot was bending. You know, your foot's supposed to go like this. It was bent like this. Like his foot was sticking the wrong way. And at first I'm looking at, oh, he's taking his shoe off. And then I'm like, his shoe's not off. His foot is pointing the wrong way. And
yeesh,
that was,
I can't even.
Oh, dude. And then, you know, we forget sometimes that these athletes are also people. And they put it like, so an injury like that, you don't have to wait to the doctor. He's done. Like definitely his year is done. His whole season is gone. A year of his career, and careers are finite, and a year of his career is now gone. And I remember they put him on this cart and they were driving him off, and you could just see he was in pain. Yes. But he was weeping because he had worked so hard, hours and hours and hours every single day, pushing his body to the limits that it can go at, studying and studying and studying and working and working and working and training and training and training. And like that, his year is done and he's over. And you could see that sadness in his face. And I was just like, he's obviously in a lot of physical pain too, but it was like, oh man, you just hate seeing that. And it gave, damn it, it made me sympathetic towards the Dallas Cowboys. And so I hate the Dallas Cowboys, but now there's a small part of me, damn you, Dak Prescott, there's a small part of me now that's kind of rooting for the Cowboys, which I never want to have as a part of my DNA. But there's actually now this little tiny part of me that's kind of rooting for the Cowboys. I want to see good things happen for them. But anyway, it was, did you see the footage, Rob, of...
Dude.
Oh, man.
Yeah. You know, here's the thing. We might have our rivalries and we might say that we hate certain teams, and we mean it. But we don't mean that the individual players, we don't bear anybody any ill will.
No.
You know, I like to see great games played by great players. And when someone is the leader of a team, he's a valuable, or she someday, I suppose, that person is a very valuable part of the whole ecosystem. And to have somebody hurt in this way, the time, I mean, you're talking about a lifetime curtailed, a lifetime of work. Probably somebody who began playing football as a little kid, you know, and getting to be a quarterback of an NFL team, like America's team. It's not really America's team, but you know, America's team. It's heartbreaking. It's just heartbreaking.
It was hard to see. All right, we got to move on here. Guillaume LaBelle writes, hey, Gio, I just finished watching your documentary, Movie Trailers, A Love Story, at Portland Film Festival, and I loved it. Very entertaining and insightful. Really hope you get all the success you deserve from it. Keep up the good work and good luck with the festivals. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And yeah, listen, we are still on course to have the movie out by the end of the year, which is really not far away now. We're already in the middle of October. We are still on course to have this thing out and available by the end of the year. Keep your eyes open for it. And thanks so much for checking out the movie. I really appreciate it, man. Very much. All right, next up, Russell Amador writes, hey, John. Last night, I stumbled on a Texas Chainsaw Massacre post stating coming in 2021. They are taking the classic, ignoring all the sequels, and this will serve as a direct sequel to the original approach like Halloween did. Is there any interest for this? I did not see that. Rob, did you see that piece of news? I didn't come across my radar.
And they released artwork for it that's really cool. And famously, when the movie was being made, the directors... they left, or they were fired 2 weeks into production, and they had to bring in another director to finish it. You know, I think having worked on Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, it was the first movie I ever worked on as an art department assistant. I think the idea of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise as being a franchise is a really hard thing to do, because after all, it's not like Leatherface is Freddy Krueger. I mean, this is a family that kills and eats people, and it's based on the horrible life of Ed Gein, and it's got a reality to it that isn't so much fun. So I don't know. I'll be curious to see how they pull it off. I mean, they keep trying to turn Texas Chainsaw Massacre into a franchise, and I don't think they understand that it doesn't have the same appeal as Jason or Nightmare on Elm Street, or pick your favorite serial killer. Leatherface isn't like that.
By the way, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre maze at Universal's annual, there's not going to be a Halloween Horror Nights this year, obviously because of the pandemic, but their annual Halloween Horror Nights, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre maze is always one of the more fun ones that they do. They always do a really good job, and it's really gross. It's really, really gross. All right, next up. Let's see. That was Russell Amador. Next up, we've got Adam UK Tipper writes, "Hey, John, without trying to guess your age, can you remember Batmania 1989? The anticipation for Burton's Batman was just insane. The trailer created so much excitement. Surely a top 20 most anticipated film in history. What do you think?" I don't think so. Like, listen, that movie obviously has a very special place in my heart. It was the movie me and my buddy Brendan, my best friend growing up, who died just a couple of years ago, and we as kids we took the bus downtown. We just started. We were in high school. We took the bus downtown, went to Jackson Square. It was the first time I'd seen a big lineup for a movie. But I don't remember it being culture sweeping like the way a Star Wars movie is, or the way an Avengers movie is, or a Harry Potter movie is. So certainly in its era, it was something new and different. I don't know that I would call it a top 20 because today we have a lot of tools, Rob, that just weren't around at that time, that really propels the hype as well. There was no Twitter. There was no social media.
Yeah.
There weren't all these things that really fanned the flames of excitement. So I would have a hard time saying it's a top 20 most anticipated. Rob, you remember this film coming out. Would you put it up there? What do you think?
I have to say that, look, like you just pointed out astutely, the world is a different place. But at the time, Batmania was, when those posters started going up and those logos, that Bat logo that was on the poster and those trailers came out, man, I have to say, I was here in LA, the hype was real, and people were especially fans, were fanatical about it, because it really was. I mean, we'd had Superman the movie, but there had been no comic book movies like this. It looked cool. It was Tim Burton. It was, from the time Michael Keaton was cast, it was always in the news. Jack Nicholson as the Joker. It was pretty hype, man. I mean, it was pretty, I would say it was, but like you said, of the time, there was no social media, but it was in every magazine. People talked about it on the news. It was just a different time. So the kind of hype that we have now was not the kind of hype that was going on then. So it was different. But I think for the time, 31 years ago, it was about as big as it got.
Right.
We didn't have the fan base that we have now. We didn't live in what I like to call the post-geek singularity. So
good point. All right, next up, Misleading Marketing writes, "I can understand you liking Last of Us 2 since you watched it and didn't play it. It can be enjoyable to watch an unlikable character, but not to play as one. Plus, many story points have no impact after killing hundreds of people with no remorse in the gameplay." I think that's a gross mischaracterization of what goes on there. First of all, you're making the assumption somebody is an unlikable character. This is the brilliance of Last of Us 2 to me, was that we often watch movies or play games where you are the centric hero, right? And the hero, whatever the hero does, is instantly acknowledged as being justified or forgivable, right? There are many video games, most video games, where you as the hero are running around maybe killing hundreds of people, but they're the bad guys. What I love, because, we always say this, everybody is the hero of their own story. But the mirror of that is all of us are the villain in somebody else's story. We don't like to think about that part, but that part is every bit as true. Everybody is the central hero in their own narrative, but every one of us, you are the villain in somebody else's story. And we forget that. And one of the brilliant things narratively about Last of Us 2 was that it took the standard trope. We've got a hero in a tough environment and a situation doing what needs to be done. But then they very unexpectedly flip the script and say, okay, now let's look at it from that other person's point of view. The person who did something that our hero considers unforgivable. Now let's look at the story from their set of eyes. And suddenly we're the ones that did things that were unforgivable. And it forces that it steps outside the very nice, neat, tidy approach that a lot of fantastic movies and games take, and it flipped it around. And to me, Rob, it's what made it, The Last of Us 2, a very, very special story. A very special story. And I think some people were not prepared for that. And I think some people were very uncomfortable with that. And it makes you look now at other narratives, and it's like, you're playing this game, it's like, okay, I'm going after that bad guy, but am I the bad guy? Like, it just kind of changes it a bit. So I don't know. I still don't know if you've ever played any of The Last of Us 2 or watched any of its narrative or anything like that, but
no, I love the first game. I just haven't had time to sit down, and because, it's, to me, it's the kind of thing where I get obsessed about video games, and if I started playing that game, I would want to play it all the way through. I haven't had time to do it, but I can't wait. I mean, you told me to watch the cinematic. You said it's like 12 hours long. Yeah,
it was about like a good full 12 hours long to watch. Anyway, I just thought it was absolutely gut-punchingly brilliant. I have never been impressed. Like, I've really enjoyed some narratives in some video games. The most recent God of War I thought was a really good narrative, but I've never been like flat out impressed and blown away by the narrative in a game like I was with Last of Us 2. It's just, it's incredible what they did. It's absolutely incredible. All right, next up. Let's see. Edward O'Neill writes, want to hear some good box office news? Demon Slayer, the movie, this is the Japanese story. Demon Slayer, the movie, just broke the opening weekend record in Japan. The anime is amazing, and the movie was praised by the creator of Your Name. Would this be enough for maybe you to give it a shot? I mean, if it became available here, I'm always looking for new content to watch. But yeah, that is something that came across my thing, that in Japan, it really blew the doors off in Japan. There's a lot of things very popular in Japan that aren't necessarily my cup of tea. Hell, there's a lot of things really popular in Italy. As an Italian, that is really not my cup of tea either. So, I mean, there's that, right? But it is interesting that so many people flocked out to see that. Given now, Japan is not exactly the biggest box office market in the world, but still, that is a really interesting piece of news and something I'll keep my eye on. All right, Dave XP writes, let's see. Let's see here. Okay, next up, Dave XP writes, Marvel movies pet peeve. Nanotech suits just randomly revealing the character's face. I miss those days when suits were mechanic or just physically taking their masks off XD. Well, listen, I have an issue with nanotech. To me, the way they use nanotech, which isn't real nanotech, the way they use nanotech, Rob, to me is just another word for sorcery, right? It's magic now. Like see, one of the things that was really cool to me, and don't get me wrong, I love the Iron Man character, even in the last number of movies, even though he's went with the nanotech stuff, I still love the character, still got excited. But one of the great things about that first Iron Man, and maybe even the second Iron Man, was that, you see Tony either in the cave or in the lab when he gets back home, soldering wires and building the things. And they made it feel as if you could actually do that. If you were as smart as Tony, they made it feel as fantastical as it was. They somehow found a way to make it feel kind of grounded and like maybe that could be reality. And there was something really cool about that. By the time you get to Infinity War and Endgame, it's not that. Now it's magic. It's just simply, they just forget anything that has any sort of grounding in reality when it comes to Iron Man. Granted, this is the same universe that has the God of Thunder in it, but we're talking about the Iron Man character specifically. They have so massively departed from that now it's just sorcery and witchcraft. Now it's magic. He is every bit a magical character as Doctor Strange is. I mean, really, because the absurdity of what his suit now does is just completely ludicrous. Again, it makes for some great scenes in movies, and I still love it, and I still eat it up and all that kind of stuff. But they really did replace any sense of, Rob, to borrow from you, verisimilitude. They just wiped all that away. The earlier film had it, not so much later. So that does drive me crazy too. I can't remember. I know you and I have talked about this before. Does the nanotech stuff bother you at all? Or is it just kind of sweep under the bridge.
I agree with you. I think that look, as much as I love Infinity War and I love Endgame, Tony Stark's suit, the fact that it can go on at will sort of takes away. I like the fact that it's a suit. Like you said, him pounding away and playing with the electronics, the idea of nanotech, it basically it takes away any limitations that the suit has. I mean, sure, there's strength limitations like when he's fighting Ebony Maw and things like that, but the way it can come and go at will so quickly, I mean, it is magic. And I do. It skirts my suspension of disbelief. I mean, I'll give it up to a point, because now that, maybe there's the influence of alien technology, and I don't know, but the nanotech suit in Infinity War kind of bothered me. The fact that he could just touch his hand and it would flow around him, I don't believe that. And I don't like it as much as if it's a real suit that he steps in and out of. Like I love the suit that he stepped in and out of in Spider-Man Spider-Man Homecoming.
Right.
That suit where he would step out of the whole suit and like it would open up for him. That was as close to nanotech as I really like. But when it can just flow over him, I mean, it still has mass. Where does all that nanotech mass come from? Where does it have to be somewhere? You're telling me the entire suit, I know it's nanotechnology, but it flows around him? He gets an entire Iron Man suit from like particles that are in his hands, or what? Where is it?
You know what part really got me? What part really bothered me? And that should, but it's the end of Infinity War. He just had his ass handed to him by Thanos, like everybody just did. And he got run through with this giant blade. This nanotech suit that fits in his watch, he sprayed this magic healing foam. Remember that? He's in there going, oh, well, I better use this nanotech suit that just happens to somehow be able to carry around this magic healing foam that he just sprays into this massive hole in his gut, and he's fine. And he's fine. And I'm like, come on. It's just, again, it was, to me, I know I'm nitpicking a bit here, granted, but it's just, man, they had something so cool with Iron Man that they kind of just, again, it's just magic now. Now it's just magic, but whatever. Okay. Let's keep moving here. Let's see here. James LH writes, hey, John, my take on Chicago 7. Great movie. This is the sort of cast an ensemble award is good for. Yeah, that is for. All good. I just want to add, Frank Langella was great as the villainous judge. His scenes with Mark Rylance as the lawyer and with Yahya Abdul-Mateen II especially were captivating. Dude, Skeletor rules. Frank Langella as the judge. And by the way, I did some reading because like I found myself watching Trial of Chicago 7 going, the one thing that bothers me is like, this judge is so incompetent that it couldn't be real. And I started reading some stuff. It's like, no, a lot of people in the legal community thought he was an absolute imbecile and like just really nasty. And so that made me appreciate it even more. But you're right. Mark Rylance is fantastic in this movie. He might actually be the best. He might actually give the best performance in the film. And Yahya Abdul-Mateen was so good. Every time he would stand up, I want to object to the court. My legal representation is not. It's just on and on. That scene with, oh my God, it's just such a well-performed film. And yes, Frank Langella as the judge is going to be overlooked a little bit, but he was fantastic in it. All right, Yusuf writes, one of two. I'm going to be honest. I think the Khabib versus Gaethje fight is going to go the same way as usual. Smesh. People talk about Justin's takedown defense, but really, when was the last time anyone shot one at him or he faced a high-level grappler? All of his fights have been with people who stood up with him, never wrestled, so I don't think Khabib will have much trouble getting the takedown, and I don't think he has the cardio or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to stop submissions or sweeps, etc. I've been wrong before, but I say Khabib wins. Listen, so this weekend is a fight that man, it's been a while. I'm not saying it's the fight, my most anticipated fight of all time. It's not. But it's been a while since I've been this excited about a fight. To me, the greatest hand-to-hand combat artist on the planet is Khabib Nurmagomedov. They also call him the Eagle. He is the baddest man alive. He is simply pound for pound. I might even be willing to take pound for pound out. I think you could throw him in with a light heavyweight and he may have them crying for mama. He is the baddest man on the planet, bar none. I'm a big GSP fan, but I think he is the greatest mixed martial artist of all time. Yeah, that includes Fedor. That includes anybody else you want to put out there. I think Khabib Nurmagomedov, because here's the thing about Khabib. You got to understand this if you don't know MMA. This little guy, because he's in one of the lighter weight class, who comes in with the big, massive Russian, like blonde kind of hat, that the poofy hat that comes out. He not only is completely undefeated, he's never lost a minute of a fight. Like, you go to something like with a really impressive fighter like a John Bones Jones, who lost his last fight, by the way, even though the judges gave him the decision. Dominic Reyes beat him. But there have been a lot of fights where he has lost several rounds. He's lost a lot of rounds, right? He's great, but he's lost a lot of rounds. Khabib has never lost a minute of a fight. He mauls you. And it is scary. He is the baddest man on the planet, and I absolutely picked Khabib to win this fight. But I will tell you right now, Khabib has never been in as much trouble as he is this weekend. He is fighting a maestro of violence. Justin Gaethje. I am telling you, Rob, Justin Gaethje is a scary, scary man. And he loves to fight. And I saw him fight Tony Ferguson, a guy who had gone years without losing a fight, and just, pardon the language, but beat the living shit out of him. I saw him go into a ring with one of the most beautiful strikers to watch in MMA, and Donald Cowboy Cerrone. He's just a beautiful striker. I saw him go in there and knock him out in the first round. Justin Gaethje goes in to take people's heads off. And if there is anybody who legitimately, like I told everybody, Conor McGregor had no chance against Khabib Nurmagomedov. No chance, and he didn't. Nobody has ever had a chance. But I'm telling you, Justin Gaethje, as much as I will still pick Khabib to win this fight, Justin Gaethje has a shot. You best believe Justin Gaethje has a shot at this. He is a bad, bad man. And like I said, he is a symphony orchestra of violence. He is a maestro of violence, and his violence is beautiful. But I'll still take Khabib. But I'm telling you, Rob, I am so excited for this fight. I am so excited for this fight. If somehow Gaethje can keep it on the feet, he's definitely got a chance. But everybody who's ever fought the undefeated champion has always said, every fight of his. The commentators always say, if he can keep it on the feet, if they can keep it on the feet, if they can keep it on the feet, guess what? They can never keep it on the feet. Because Khabib Nurmagomedov, his dad made him wrestle bears when he was a child. There's video of this. His dad would make him wrestle bears. Nobody can keep it on the feet. It's going to be fun to see, and I cannot wait for that fight. Sorry for the sidetrack there, guys. When you get me talking about MMA, and I'll get a little bit excited and worked up. Okay, next up, the Nova Scotia won't hold you. I was born in Nova Scotia, as a matter of fact. Has there been another actor who's had the type of run Yahya Abdul-Mateen is currently having? Yes, many, many, many times. But he's definitely having a super hot run right now. It's wild to think that he made such an impression with mostly supporting roles. Really excited to see what he does in Candyman and Matrix 4. Yeah, Candyman is the one where he's really going to have the spotlight on him. Right, he's really going to have the spotlight on him in Candyman. And so that's going to be exciting to see. But, you're right. Before Aquaman, he had been in some things, but he was not like, you say Yahya Abdul-Mateen now, people are like, oh yeah, I know that name. Before Aquaman, I don't know if that was the case. Suddenly you're Black Manta, but he has impressed a lot of people. Trial of the Chicago 7 is no different, and he's absolutely on a great streak. All right, Seth Tipton writes, by a mutation in the X gene, after contracting COVID-19, Hugh Jackman is Permaclaw Wolverine. Life's not so easy, writing a blog about learning Spanish while also taking a pottery class with permanently protracted claws. Coming soon, 20th Century Fox Plus. Listen, all joking aside, Seth, there are still people out there, Rob, who are absolutely convinced that Hugh Jackman is coming back as Wolverine. I was just reading through a thread a couple of days ago about all the evidence that Hugh Jackman is coming back as Wolverine. Hugh Jackman is never coming back as Wolverine. All right. He may pop his face on screen as a fun cameo or something here or there. Hugh Jackman is never coming back as Wolverine. He is already about 40 pounds lighter than he used to be. I believe he's in his 50s at this point. How old is Hugh Jackman? Hold on a second. Hugh Jackman age, I believe he's 52. Hold on a second. 52 years old. He's not interested. And one of the things he said that he's looking forward to retiring from Wolverine was that he was done with his workouts. He did not want to do that anymore. So, but honestly, Rob, I still see there's a lot of people out there who believe that. Do you think there's any chance that we legitimately see Hugh Jackman, even just for one more go? Do you think there's any chance we get Hugh Jackman back again?
You know, maybe as an appearance, but he's certainly not going to be playing Wolverine the way he played Wolverine before. I mean, the whole thing is that they have to establish a whole new identity for the X-Men and Wolverine in the MCU. To if you have Wolverine, then you're kind of locked into the rest of the X-Men, and they don't want to do that. They're going to recast the whole thing. They're going to build it from the ground up. We're going to get somebody else playing Wolverine.
All right, let's move on here. Next up, R. Lee writes, John, sites are reporting that rights to Luke Cage and Iron Fist are to revert back to Marvel this month. If true, I would love to see Heroes for Hire on Disney+. Given their power sets, the show could be made cost-effective, or did Netflix ruin that possibility? I don't know. Look, at some point, all those rights are going back to the right. The question becomes, though, when people hear those rights are reverting, they start thinking, oh, we're going to get that Luke Cage. We're not getting that Luke Cage. Apparently that, you know, if I understand it properly, those iterations of those characters can't be done by Marvel. And as we've already talked about before, Kevin Feige doesn't like picking up other people's sloppy seconds. Just Kevin Feige's not into that. I believe we can see Luke Cage. It'll just be a different Luke Cage than what Netflix is. It's totally separate from what was done on Netflix and all that kind of stuff. I believe we're going to get Daredevil, but totally separate from it's not going to be Charlie Cox, and it's going to be a completely different Daredevil than we got now. And we live in a world where Ben Affleck is coming back as Batman. In that world, absolutely anything can happen. But again, Kevin Feige has shown that he has no desire for other people's sloppy seconds. He wants his characters that he introduced, telling his stories that come with no background baggage. Plus, I think there is still a rights issue to certain iterations of the character. Rob, to me, it's kind of like, let's say Wizard of Oz, right? Technically speaking, Wizard of Oz is in the public domain. So anybody can make a Wizard of Oz movie.
Yeah.
Or Thor. Let's go to the Thor example. Thor is a public domain thing. Anybody can make a Thor movie. You can pick up a camera today and go make a Thor movie if you want. Here's the catch, though. You can only use things in your Thor movie that are actually a part of the original mythology or things that you create and come up with yourself. Mm-hmm. You cannot have anything in your Thor movie that was made up by other people's Thor movies. So, like Wizard of Oz, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the Wizard of Oz book had the ruby slippers. There was something key like that the movie made up. Okay, so if you want to make another Wizard of Oz movie, which James Franco did, James Franco made another Wizard of Oz movie with Sam Raimi, they could make a Wizard of Oz movie. They just couldn't use any element that was introduced in that original Wizard of Oz movie. So I think the same thing kind of is at play here. I think there are things and elements that are introduced in Luke Cage or whatever, those things cannot be a part of anything Marvel now does with that. So it just kind of buzzes that. But I'd still say there's a 5% chance we get those characters as they were in Netflix back. Rob, number one, do you think we'll see Kevin Feige at some point utilize those Netflix characters? Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, Daredevil, Punisher, and then beyond that question, if he does use those characters, what do you think the chances are that he uses the actual iterations of the characters that we saw in the Netflix series?
Well, John, as of 11 o'clock today, 20 minutes ago, Disney Plus has announced The Willow TV series is officially a go at Disney Plus.
All right. They've been talking about that for like 6 months, haven't they? But now it's officially a go.
It's officially dropped. Ron Howard, the director of Willow, is an executive producer, and Warwick Davis is coming back to play Willow. Never in my wildest dreams, John, never would I have thought that there would be a Willow series. The same way I didn't think there'd ever be a Dark Crystal series either. So I think never say never. But that said, I think we are going to see Daredevil in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I just don't think we're going to see the iteration of Daredevil that we got on the Netflix show. Right. I think Kevin Feige, like you pointed out, he wants to be able to create these characters in his own image or in the image of the way they fit into the MCU. I mean, I loved the iteration of Daredevil that we got for Netflix. I think the iteration of Daredevil that we're going to get will be different. And I think that, look, I'd love to see Luke Cage. I'd love to see Iron Fist. I love Jessica Jones, too. I could see these characters being utilized, but we're going to see them built from the ground up in a different way inside the MCU. And I think of those 4 characters, Daredevil's the one we're probably going to see first.
Right. Apparently, John M. Chu is going to be, that's interesting. John M. Chu is going to direct that. He is going to direct the Willow series for Disney Plus. Of course, he was supposed to be doing the Masters of the Universe years ago. Remember that? When John M. Chu was going to be directing a He-Man movie? That was a long time ago.
Okay. I mean, how crazy is it? There's going to be a Willow show with Warwick Davis playing Willow, after 32 years or something?
I know. By the way, I just love Warwick Davis. I just think that dude is hilarious. All right,
he was in that show. Was it Extras or with the Ricky Gervais? Yes.
Yep. His scenes that he would do. I remember this one scene he did with Liam Neeson. It was him, Richie Gervais, and Liam Neeson. You go look it up, and it's just absolutely hilarious. Or not actually. Maybe it was it called Small World? Or I can't remember what it was. It's something to do with him. All right. Nexus writes. According to Daniel Richman's Patreon, there have been recent talks between Jared Leto and DC about him coming back as the Joker and possibly co-starring in the Harley and Joker project we all thought was scrapped. What do you make of these rumors? I don't believe the rumors. I've heard whispers about that too, but I don't believe it personally. But I'm all for it. Listen, I've said before, I liked the Suicide Squad movie. Like, up until Birds of Prey, I've liked every DC movie. Shoot me. But I've liked them all, including Suicide Squad, which is a hot mess of a film. But there was enough in there that had me smiling and having a good time that I walked out enjoying it. But to me, and this is an unpopular opinion, my favorite part was Joker and Harley. Every second, every preciously rare second that Joker and Harley were on the screen together, I was riveted. I love that toxic, destructive, codependent relationship between them. I ate it up. As a matter of fact, Rob, I think my favorite scene in that movie was the scene with Common at the club. I mean, that just said so much about the relationship between them, right? And I've always said I am totally down for a Joker and Harley movie. I'm absolutely down for it. I don't believe it's going to happen. I would love it to happen. And again, we live in a world where Jamie Foxx is coming back to play Electro, that Ben Affleck's coming back to be Batman, and Warwick Davis is going to be Willow again. We live in that world.
Dude, it's so crazy.
Hope springs eternal. So I don't buy it. I don't think they're going to do that. But if they do, I will be personally, I know this is unpopular, but I don't give a shit. I would be very, very happy. Rob, do you buy this rumor, and what do you think of it?
Like you said, it's hard to say no to these things, but I honestly just don't think that he made enough of an impression as the character. It's not like he was a character that was so embraced and beloved by the fan base or everybody. I mean, people like him as an actor. Obviously, he's a good actor, but I don't see that happening. I just don't see it happening.
All right, let's move on. We only got a couple left here, guys. MD writes, I mentioned the other day how I avoid first seasons because I hate when they get canceled. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way, and I still do, but I feel it. I just 2 days ago started Away on Netflix. Oh, yes. I heard about this. Away just got canceled. Just 2 days ago, I started Away on Netflix, but I've just seen today it's been canceled despite being in Netflix's top 3 new shows. Nelson ratings fuming. Yeah, so that new show Away that everybody was all excited. I never did get around to watching it yet, but they pulled the plug on it just like that, and just like that, it's gone. Now, listen, with the show, Rob, you and I know this. With a show, there are a million moving pieces. Right? And it's not just ratings.
Right.
There are a million moving pieces. And anything can go wrong. Like maybe a certain producer decided they wanted something and there's a rights problem if that producer walks, or maybe one of the stars of the show said, nah, I don't want to come back and do it. And they thought, well, it's problematic. We can't do another season without Zach. I mean, all I'm saying is it's not always just about ratings. Ratings is absolutely the first thing. That's absolutely the top one. But there are other moving pieces, and I saw that news, and I keep forgetting who's the star of that again.
Hilary Swank.
Hilary Swank, multi-Academy Award winner Hilary Swank. And I saw that got pulled already. It's like, well, I guess I won't watch the first season then because I know it probably ends before it wanted to. Rob, you saw, what's your take on that?
Well, I think that with Netflix shows, I think Netflix as an environment is got to be one of the most cutthroat places to have a show, because they do have so many accurate analytics. They can see who's watching that show in real time. And I think they look at, I think it's academic with them. There's a cost benefit analysis. We are spending so much money on a show for its first season, and we expect to have this much viewership, because it all equates back to subscribers and how they're serving their viewers. And I think if a show doesn't work right away out of the gate, they cancel it because it's just about academics. The problem is what Netflix doesn't have, because a lot of shows, people got to catch up. There's so much to watch that a show like Away, which it's not exactly the most well-promoted show in the world, sometimes it takes 6 months or a year before people even knew it was there to watch. So I think if you don't make a splash right away on Netflix, you're gone, especially if your show's expensive. I think you're just out. They don't give you time to build your audience, unless I guess you're a favorite of the people inside of Netflix, which we'll never really know. But I think that's a real danger to Netflix's business model, is that sometimes good shows take a while to catch on, because nobody's watching. There's only so much time in the day, and Netflix drops all these shows. I mean, this is John, I love space shows, but I just haven't got around to watching it. It's Jason Katims' Friday Night Lights. It's Hilary Swank. It's Going to Mars. I mean, these things all check boxes for me, but even I'm like, oh, I'll get around to it. But I mean, my God, how are you supposed to catch up with everything? And when they get rid of these shows after a year or after one season, let's face it, after a month, it's been playing for a month or two, and now it's gone. I mean, I want to binge over the holidays when things are boring and nothing's happening. Then I would have caught up with that show, and maybe a lot of people would have too, but no longer. It's gone. Show's gone.
All right, let's keep going here. Just 2 more questions to go here, guys. Let's see. Captain Blue Pants writes, pet peeve, there's a ticking clock, or an enemy is fast approaching, or just a general moment of intense urgency. Then the characters stop to have a heart. Ann and I were just watching something last night where we had this exact same conversation. The characters stop to have a heart-to-heart or reunion moment, and I'm just there like, get the F out of the building before it blows up. I swear, I try to remember what it was. Ann and I, like yesterday or the day before, we were watching something where it's like something is happening imminently, or there's a real urgency to something. And these 2 characters stop and go, wait, before we go in there's something I got to say. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? This is not the time to stop and have a conversation, but they do it all the time. I get it though. It is for narrative purposes. I get it. Rob, you and I were talking yesterday about the fact that, they'll have to say, wait a minute. How come a year is the same to this other alien as it is to us? Or how come this other civilization speaks English magically? I get it. Sometimes a storyteller needs to have narrative brought across at a certain moment, and it creates these moments where it's like, you couldn't tell her this after you get the kidney to the hospital where somebody's waiting for a transplant. Like this happens all the time. It is one of those tropes, but it is, to me, Rob, it's like that alien language or a year is a year. It's kind of like that to me, that I just understand it's part of the narrative, a narrative tool they need to have in their belt, I guess. But have you ever noticed that one? Has that kind of trope ever stood out to you before?
Yes. I mean, there's all of these things. This happens in drama all the time because, you've only got so much time. You're combining a perilous situation with some kind of emotional connection. And rather than get out of the perilous connection and then have the situation and then have an emotional connection, they try and do both at once to keep up the drama and the action and excitement. And I think sometimes it just you're like, come on, man, let's get clear of harm's way and then we'll deal with our feelings. It does. It happens all the time. And I understand it. And it's a trope of drama, but it does get annoying.
All right, last question of the day, guys. Brent Robinson writes, "Hey guys, breaking news. The Willow series is a go for Disney Plus and will be directed by John M. Chu, which we were just talking about, of course. This just broke, I think, 20 minutes ago. Anyway, have a wonderful day, and thank you for all you do." Yeah, and again, this is something, Rob, that, I mean, there was some talk going on about this, like even back at the last D23. Like there's been discussions about and some news coming out about them looking at doing a new Willow series and blah, 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 just kind of waiting to see if they ever pull the trigger on it. Apparently now they are indeed pulling the trigger on it. Listen, do I find myself sitting around every day going, man, when do we get more Willow? No, I don't. I love the Mad Modigan. I love the original as much as anybody, but it's never been one that I felt like that's a world we have to go back to. But listen, I am a sucker for fantasy stuff. And as I've already said, I'm a sucker for Warwick Davis. And so you do this, I'm instantly intrigued. I am instantly intrigued. Now, how involved is Ron Howard really going to be? Probably minimally, if at all, really, other than just attaching his name to it, I expect. But doesn't matter. Sign me up. I like this type of stuff. I will definitely give it a shot. Rob, what's your overall thought of it? Is this something you're kind of anticipating or what?
Well, to be honest, I mean, whenever I hear stuff like this happening, I'm thinking, you know what? Cobra Kai, the Dark Crystal reboot. I mean, there are people that are making these things. I mean, I'm sure John Chu loved Willow, so he's going to come on board and give it his all. I'll be curious to see how Kathleen Kennedy handles this, a non-Star Wars Lucasfilm project. I think there's a lot going for this. And I think that nowadays, especially, I use Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai now is the example that everybody needs to be shooting for if you're going to bring back these old IPs. And we're going to be getting, I mean, Creed being another one of them, these kind of revitalizations of these old IPs, if that's what we're going to get, I'm all for it. It's the bastardization of IPs like what's going on with Star Trek that I don't like, where you
By the way, season 3, episode 1 was so good. Season 3, episode 1 was so good.
You're out of your mind. It was an amalgamation of 20 other different sci-fi shows that weren't Star Trek. But the last 5 minutes, I will grant you, felt like Star Trek, even though they ripped it off.
All right, I got to tell you what though. I'm watching Star Trek Discovery season 3, episode 1. Finally, I got caught up and watched it yesterday, and I'm watching it. And number one, I'm loving it, but I'm also thinking, knowing why Rob doesn't like, because he's explained it to me, knowing why Rob doesn't like the previous stuff, he's probably not liking this episode. But then it got to the part with the guy waiting on that station.
Yep.
And I remember watching and thinking, I don't think Rob liked the rest of this episode. I bet you he likes this part. Now, to me, it was very reminiscent of the beginning of Battlestar Galactica. But
that was another thing. It was they just keep ripping off stuff, but I love that actor.
But not just that, but it kind of embodied, to me, the part I remember thinking, I bet Rob loves this whole aspect, which is, because I know you get frustrated when they deviate from this, when they are really trying to focus on what the ideals of the Federation are supposed to be. When they focus on what the ideals are of the Federation, which is why I also kind of liked a lot of stuff in Picard when he was really espousing these great ideals of what the Federation is. And as soon as they started going into those aspects, whether it was her or whether it was the guy on the station, whatever, I thought, I bet you Rob at least appreciates these parts. And it sounds like you did.
Yes, I did.
Okay,
yes, I did.
So. And the hanging of the flag and...
I loved it. I'm like, where's this show? Where's
Has the second episode come out yet?
No, it drops Thursday night.
Drops Thursday. By the way, you know what else I started watching again? Sorry, totally sidetracked here. Archer. Archer's back on. I love Archer so much. All right. Anyway, that will do it for us, guys. We actually got through I think this is the first time ever we got through all the questions while Rob was still here.
Crazy.
Probably we got to the questions a lot earlier than we normally do because the first three topics are pretty short. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for being here and being a part of our day with us. It's always an honor having you joining us as we talk about our favorite things in the world. Special thanks, of course, to Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, where can people follow you and all of your intergalactic Imagineering adventures online? Where can people follow you?
You can find me on Twitter at BurnettRM. Find me on Instagram at Robert Meyer Burnett, or find me over on my YouTube channel, The Burnett Work, and where the ongoing First Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival continues on. And if you want to make a movie, just like John said on his Thoughts on Walks, you've still got until December 1st to make your first film and put it on our film festival over on the Burnett Work.
You guys should absolutely go over and check that out because I think it would be a lot of fun for a lot of you guys. Guys, of course, thank you to all of you for being here and making the show part of your day. Special thank you to all of you who sent in those live questions. Number one, because you gave us great fun things to talk about. But number two, because you supported this show as you did it. And all of us here, thank you for that. Guys, remember to do the four important things. Stay smart, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and please take care of the people around you. That'll do it for me and Rob, guys. Don't forget to join us again tomorrow. My name is John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.